little slow today.
Okay, we are recording.
All right, thank you so much. Let me look here, get one more thing here. I do have this up. Okay, I'd like to call, it's 5 o'clock, call our February Airport Commission meeting to order. Brian, roll call, please.
Okay, Commissioner Lorman.
Here.
Commissioner Fazzard. Commissioner Hanero.
Here.
Commissioner Bond.
Here.
Commissioner Shaw.
Here.
Commissioner Munson.
Here.
Chair Halleck is also here and present.
Thank you. Are we properly posted all the notices as required?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much. First item up is the approval of the minutes. I'll give everybody a chance to look at them. Does anybody have any questions, comments, revisions? Would anybody care to make a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Anyone care to second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a first, and we have a second. All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, the minutes are approved. I don't really have anything for the report. We are trying to make sure we have everything in place for the petition. And we'll talk about the fuel truck when we get down to that line item below. So that's really all I have. So with that, unless somebody has any questions about something at the airport that maybe I have some tangential knowledge of. Okay. With that, let's move on to the airport manager's report. Rich?
Okay, very good. I'll just go through January's and then February's. From November 25 through December 31, 2022, 7 individuals made a total of 9 overflight or noise reports. 2 individuals made 2 reports each. All reports which requested contact were addressed by phone or email by myself. In 2 cases, I was able to identify the pilots involved and spoke with them. I just want to emphasize, well, both agreed to modify their flight patterns to comply with the voluntary noise abatement procedure. One pilot was using the interim or the noise abatement procedure that required us off going to the west to turn over the power lines, as opposed to the new, which was also the old, noise abatement procedure, which is to climb to pattern altitude, level off, throttle back, and then turn. Another was taking off to the east and was not compensating for the strong wind, so went over our friends on top of the hill to our north and east. He was assured me that wouldn't happen again. No aircraft accidents or incidents on the field. And airport maintenance, we had collected about 70% or a bit more of the hangar keys. And we coordinated with the fire department, and the keys are in the Knox box now as of February 1st. The noise abatement signs that were adjacent to the runway, where we had a NetJet taxi out, and they were a little concerned about their proximity. We double checked with Mead and Hunt to find the appropriate distance out. When we put them in, I believe the recommendation was 50 feet. Now the requirement is 65 feet. We moved them out 70 feet. No big deal with that, but it wasn't a safety issue, but it's a lot more convenient this way. Okay. Or at least, well, I guess it could potentially have been a safety issue. Now there's more than enough clearance. Again, John, I'll defer the truck information to you. I know you've been in touch with them. We are planning on buying the supplemental type certifications for a couple of our training aircraft to give that a shot as soon as we get the fuel. We hosted the VMC Club from the Chapter 93 EAA December 8th. That's a safety-oriented group. Get together, they look at real-world scenarios and try to figure out the safest way to maneuver those. And yeah, we're going to be hosting a safety seminar, time to be determined. Any questions about January? Okay, February. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I did have a question, Rich. Thanks for the report. I'm just wondering, so you mentioned one pilot was following the interim noise abatement procedures. How old was the interim set? Like when were the procedures?
I think we went back a couple years ago, at least. We went back to the original because we've determined that the interim, as requested by the town chair, we actually had more noise complaints than we did with the older version.
Okay. But the new ones or the final ones would have been communicated to all the pilots, correct? And they're
Well, they certainly, everyone should have gotten that notice, but again, we have a wide variety of pilots that come in and out of here. We have them posted, we have everything done, but when, again, I believe this fellow started his flying here with the interim noise abatement procedure. There's something called primacy of learning. That's the way he had it in his head. And certainly we should have made sure that he had this, the new information. Honestly, depending on wind conditions and the performance of the aircraft, it's not uncommon that power line is about on the far average of where we would be turning anyway. But now he knows that he can turn when he gets to his altitude. So on winter days like today, when we have a strong wind out of the west, we're turning considerably further east than the power lines with our, by the time we get to pattern altitude and throttle back. So I don't know if that's answering your question, but yes, he should have been aware of it. Yes, we had it posted, but sometimes people just revert back to their original training without really giving it much thought.
great, thanks.
Okay.
We had that in the pilot handbook that we built. Has it been, that has the pilot handbook? Can you check and verify and make sure it's updated to align with the current procedure?
I will do that, John. I will make sure that the pilot handbook has been updated. I know our posted has been out here, the posted bits. Okay.
Have you got the grass runway kind of curious closed?
Yeah, grass runway is closed. It's noted closed from end of November through, I believe, April.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, just to let everyone know, it is legal to land on a closed runway or operate off of it, but you're doing it on your own at own risk. So We will have occasionally ski planes come in and land on that and then go on out. But yes, the grass runway is closed right now.
Right.
Okay. Now, oops. On to the February report. We had just horrible January weather-wise. You might have noted it, but we had so not much flying. Had 4 overflight or noise reports. One individual made 2 reports. All reports which requested contact were addressed by phone or email by myself. No accidents or incidents on the field. And yes, the keys are in the Knox boxes now as of yesterday. Still waiting. Well, John will talk about the truck. The Madison Area Youth Aviation Club on January 7th. Very, very popular, popular, only 8 kids, but 8 parents. They really enjoyed it. And we're going to have another one coming up this weekend. I don't know if you know this club in detail, but they're targeting the underserved populations. So kids of color, am I supposed to say underserved population. They're coming out, people that, in the past may have not have even considered aviation as a career are now being exposed to it through the auspices of Susan Schwab, a retired airline captain, and her crew of good people. Snow removal is going well, and we wanted to wish our Felix V the best of luck. He is leaving our employ and heading off to Air West, I believe it is. Yeah, so he's a great instructor. I'm sure he'll be a great first officer and airline captain eventually.
Good.
Youth and Aviation Club, again, that will be February 4th. And then the EAA chapter is having their annual meeting and chili feed actually in the conference room on the 18th. And that's the manager's report such as it is.
All right. Any other questions for Rich on any of that? I'm happy to see these folks move up into these commercial air transportation positions. I mean, that's kind of a affirmation that job well done.
Well, thanks, Jeff. It's always been the case that the young people that are in as instructors are only here for so long. They build up their time to where they're hireable and they go on to the airlines or corporate. Over the last year, we've lost 2 very good instructors, not lost, but they've moved on to the airlines. And we know that's part of the deal. It always has been.
Well, that's the goal. So looking at the financials now, we'll move on. I mean, I don't see a lot of variances. We're up on cash, or slightly down on cash, because we didn't receive all of the grants. I'm sure that's billed out, but not received yet. So the timing of this always has a little bit of wonkiness in it, and it takes a little bit of while for everything to get totally adjusted. The changes in expenses. So our uses are down from 246 to 54. Some of that has to do with the fuel truck as anticipated, and some of that will roll over into next year. We'll be out of that budget. So all in all, we are probably better off than where we thought we were going to be. So I'm happy about that. Just we have to remember though that this money that we have, a lot of it is really limited in the way we can use it. So this isn't money for anything. So anything that's in the grants has to be for that specific grant. Anything for the bilateral legislation and AIP has to be used for AIP money. So I don't want people to think, oh, well, the airport's got 108,000, they can do whatever they want with, because that's just not the fact. The fact that these are limited use funds and directed by the FAA on how to use them. Any questions about what we're looking at here? Any research I need to do to help? I think all in all, we didn't do a bad job of most of this.
Thank you for keeping such tight track of our funds, John. You do a great job with it.
We're getting better. It's like, it's a skill, it's like anything else. It just, the more you do it, the better you get. So, great. So on to, if there's no other questions here, just a brief blurb on the our requests. I've double checked with the BOA on our request for the projects. Make sure all of our paperwork's in. I'll probably have a call with them in the next week or two, just to double check and go through all the paperwork. But hopefully we're still on, we'll build a schedule for that for next year. So that's kind of where we're at with the maintenance petition and our cash. Okay. Moving on, the unleaded avgas fuel truck update. Well, there's some good news and some bad news. When we bought the truck was, quote, listed as overhauled. And the intent of that was that it would be overhauled at the time of purchase. So when we bought the truck or made an offer for the truck, we had the truck looked at, and there were some concerns over some coolant leaks and some other items. We forwarded those over to the seller and asked the seller to mitigate those costs. And the seller is going to cover the costs of the repairs that we identified with our inspection. I contacted them last week. I didn't get a response, but they told me it would be probably sometime in late January before they were through. The president was out. I will talk to the president again. I told him it was urgent that we get moving on this. And so that's kind of where we're at today. Rich has been working on the supply side. And if you know more about this, it was the owners have contracted Rich, you or Greg, and you know, you have more knowledge than I do. You can feel free to share it with us.
Honestly, John, I think you're more on top of the where we're at with the maintenance on that truck than we are. I'm ready to go as soon as we have it. We'll get a load of 94 UL up here as soon as they can coordinate an efficient delivery, and we'll be ready to start using it in our 152s initially to see how everything goes with it.
Yeah, I can't believe that they're not in a hurry to get paid. So I will, like I say, continue to push on this and the previous item through the week.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, point of information.
Yes,
So I did take the opportunity to make a call to the company today to see if I could also get an update. The president was out, but I did talk to somebody on their kind of administrative staff.
yes.
They were put my call into their service department to give me an update on where the repairs were at. I've not yet gotten a phone call back, but as soon as I get one and get an update on if those repairs have been completed, I will send a note out to the commission so that they're aware.
All right, thank you, Brian. I appreciate the effort on that. Okay, any questions of Brian?
I have one. I'm just wondering what is the new estimated cost to the city?
It would be the original bid amount. There's no addition for the repairs.
What was the original bid amount?
Is it 49 or 59? I don't have it on top of my head.
I'd have to verify, but I believe it's 45 and
Yeah,
change.
it was 40, it was 45. Mhm.
Yep.
And on the supply side, Rich, I know you're working on the fuel for this truck. Any status on the 100 UL fuel?
I've heard nothing from our suppliers, and they know that we're interested in it, in that there is any availability in this area, or at least not from them. I know, I have a pretty good idea of what's happening in the state, and I don't believe anyone has the 100 UL in the state yet. It's going to make big news when it does come in. So, but again, I don't have an update on that, and frankly, I don't anticipate anything for the next couple of years. It's going to take a while for the supply side to build up to that, and I think they might even be holding a little bit until the Swift Fuel 100 or R100 gets sorted out with the FAA as well. But that's just my my estimation on it.
Thanks. And I agree that it's probably going to make really big news when somebody finally gets it. And I would love to see Middleton be the municipality that gets it first, or be in the first group.
I share that sentiment.
There was a AOPA article that I think I passed on to Brian, where they're focusing right now on the supply side, mixing it up, and they're thinking they're trying to get some of this out. Is that it there?
And they were talking about this email Brian sent out, that they may be focusing on California first, but they're doing everything they can to get this fuel out ASAP.
Yeah, so they're working on ramping up distribution as they go, and also filling in their SDC list. So they're moving, but they're moving at the constraints of government and manufacturing. Okay. All right, back to the agenda. Our next item is the capital request for a pedestrian gate. Matt, are you online?
I am.
Okay, great. So I had a couple of thoughts, and I talked them through with Matt just to see if they were palatable. So what I would like to make a recommendation that we do is that we allow Capital Flight to build a gate consistent with the standards of the rest of the fencing adjacent to their office or crossing their office. And that would include all of the sidewalk in both directions. So it would be integrated into the sidewalk system. The Capital Flight could, if they chose, put their name or a plaque onto the gate saying Capital Flight. So it would be quote unquote a business entrance. Capital Flight would write a security document as to that would be handed out. It would also be journalized into our records as to how the gate is to secure, how codes will be passed out, etc. I think a lot of those is really already kind of cut and dried, but it'd be nice to have a formalized procedure. Capital Flight would be required to provide the security. So, I mean, it's their gate. They own security. They would install it at their price, at their cost, meeting our standards. And I think that solves all of our problems. One, there's no cost to us. It does integrate with the current standards. Capital Flight gets what they need for their business. And our security, we have procedures. So that's my thought, and I think it's palatable to Matt. Any comments, Matt?
No, just that I appreciate the fact that we've gotten to this place, and I agree wholeheartedly with everything that that you've illustrated here.
Okay. So commissioners, thoughts, comments?
I think that's a great idea, John, and I applaud you for thinking through a manner of trying to find a win-win situation here.
Well, if there's no general comments, I'd like to make a motion. Go ahead.
Kevin's got his hand up and I'd like to go after Kevin.
Okay.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
thank you. Just you know, right now we have a gate that it's just for hangar owners, and only they have the code, or that's the way it's supposed to work. But for someone like me, the only way I can get into the airport is through the FBO, Rich's FBO. And that's typical, right? And so this gate's, you know, Matt has mentioned that it's a pedestrian gate. And, you know, I don't have a problem with the gate as long as the same standards. There's a restricted, you know, there's SOPs, people are trained, they document the training. They have a list of people that can access the gate. In other words, you know, it'd be employees of the company or whatnot. There's a, you know, so those codes don't go out to the general public. And I know, so those are some of my concerns that need to be resolved, you know, before we put the gate in. So we need to make sure that, hey, this isn't a pedestrian gate. This is a limited access gate, just like the one that we have for the hangars. And of course, the other, you know, the perfect scenario would be that the fence goes right up to Capital Flight's FBO. So anyone that wants to visit can go right through there, and then they have to get through that portion before they can access the ramp or someplace that there's airplanes. So I just want to make sure that, you know, that all the security is in place and the SOPs are there and people are trained and the training's documented, et cetera. So that'd be my primary concern.
Yeah, well, part of the motion was that that Capital Flight would have to have approved standard operating procedures for security and the operation of the gate. And I mean, it could be anything. I mean, it could be, they have to call Matt's cell phone and he has to open it up. I mean, there are certain things you can't do. You can't publish the code and hand it out on a document and start handing it out to people. So there are, like I say, certain things you can't do. And so we would, as the airport commission, and also the airport manager primarily, first, would have to review the document of operating practices to make sure we're comfortable with them. Does that make sense, Kevin?
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure we're going to have something like that in place.
Absolutely. So that would be part of the motion.
And piggybacking on to what Kevin just said, so as the airport sponsor, I'm thinking the city must have to do some due diligence, like review the plans, review the SOP for security, inspect, monitor, you know, that type of ongoing things so that we're fully compliant with our assurances. And so I would like to see the city made whole for any of those costs related to the installation, operation, and ongoing use of this gate.
But definitely the operation and maintenance of it would be owned by Capital Flight. However, I think the inspections and all the work that we do for all the rest of the gates would just be incorporated into that because it would not be significant.
It may be the case that it's not significant. And if that is the case, that makes it less of a burden for Capital Flight to pay for that. But I don't see, if this is going to be Capital Flight's gate that is opening access to our airport, I don't see why we would not want to, again, do our due diligence as the sponsor and oversee and periodically inspect, and that's going to lead to charges for us. And perhaps, I don't know if Brian is able to comment on that, but I'd be curious to hear if he had something to say.
I can probably address that. I don't mean to step on Brian, but
Go
we
ahead, Rich.
already maintain the existing gates, both the car gates and the pedestrian, or excuse me, the walkthroughs. We can easily add one more. That's something that I can meet certainly with Matt. We can check with it. It won't add very much to anything, and it'll go right on my if with additional, whatever additional time it takes to add one more walkthrough gate to our oversight, will go into my hours that I report to the city for operating this airport. And it will not be terribly much. And all of it will come, of course, out of the airport fund, the non-lapsing fund. And I personally feel that it just makes sense to do so. As Matt has pointed out, he's paying a land lease at a commercial rate. And if he's willing, I think it's quite generous to finance the entire project. It won't cost a heck of a lot more for me to, and or my people to monitor it.
Yeah, I think we should give Matt and with Rich's review, an opportunity to put together the plan and the SOP. And then we can approve it once at the next airport commission meeting. So we can give I guess we can make a motion for tentative approval. Subject to the operating procedures review of along the lines that we said, and that Capital Flight would be allowed to install a gate consistent with the rest of the gates at that standard, and also the associated sidewalks. And it would be at their expense. That would be my motion. Second,
I'll just add one comment. I would also say to Rich and Matt, when you're just looking at this, putting together your SOP for it, we shouldn't have two separate SOPs for the airport. So whatever we do at all the other walkthrough gates simply should be applied to that gate.
yeah, I think that is covered under the pilot training for security.
Okay, yeah. So we just don't want to have, separate set of rules. Yeah,
Agree.
thanks.
So John, I will second your motion.
Okay. so we have
Can
a
someone
first and a
repeat the motion that we're voting on?
Sure.
So what I have down for the motion would be that the request for the pedestrian gate from Capital Flight would be conditionally approved upon the city airport commission reviewing and approving the standard operating procedure and security plan for said gate at their next meeting.
And the cost
Did you,
of, would
yeah,
be,
the cost needs to be,
it would be borne
specified.
by Capital Flight.
Yep.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. Any additional comments? Okay, I'd like to call a vote. All in favor of the Capital Flight request, as the motion is stated, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, Matt, start working on your SOP.
Thanks,
next
thanks so
item.
much, Gary.
Next item is the update and discussion on airport uses. This was at the request of Kevin Munson. And so Kevin, I'll let you take the floor here.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Chair. So we, these general aviation airports, reliever airports, whatever we like to call them, AIP airports that are funded by the the FAA are, as I've mentioned, and most of you heard me say, are extremely critical to the national transportation infrastructure. And what they do is they take a lot of operations, aviation operations away from the air carrier airports, and that could be regional airports such as Dane County all the way up to international airports like San Francisco, SFO. And even these smaller airports like the general aviation airports like Morey Field have 30, 40, 50,000 operations a year. If those were moved to the major air carrier airports, the Part 121 and also air cargo airports, it would effectively shut down the national transportation infrastructure. So they perform a critical role of, first and foremost, a commercial operation of training pilots. Secondly, charter, and perhaps, way down the list is, for recreation, which there is some of that. I know all the airports that I've been in and out of, that I've flown in and out of, and those have been hundreds and hundreds of airports, mostly general aviation, but I have flown into some of our major airports, SFO, Atlanta, and Dallas, and a few other ones like that. Their primary function is flight training, first and foremost. If you break down, and I've asked Rich if he could talk a little bit about how we break down the operations at Morey, and it's not just recreation. That's a component, but a very insignificant component of what we do. To give you an idea of how tight, the United States air transportation system is really suffering, and it has been for years. I know President Biden has infused a lot of money as he came into some of the East Coast airports and said these are some of the worst airports that in the world. We need to get back up to speed. So we're definitely having issues. There's lots of delays, a lot of people, as a whole complaining. Transportation Secretary is looking even more into infusing more money into the air transportation system to get it back up to speed. There's a lot of problems. But one thing, airports like Morey Field and the other 3,000 or 4,000 general aviation airports are absolutely critical. And the FAA has no plans to close any of those, even the ones that are not receiving federal funds. It'll still be years and years and years, perhaps decades before they're shut down, if they are at all, because the air transportation system is in such dire straits, and the air cargo end of that is just adding to the problem with, the demand for air cargo because of the internet. So what I asked Rich to do at our particular airport, because there seems to be some misinformation out there that our airport is just used for recreation, and though there's probably a component of recreation, it's not the primary use of the airport. Like I said, most of these general aviation airports are used for flight instruction. And other activities, anything that they can take away from the Part 121 airports. Those are the scheduled air carrier airports, like the Dane counties, the Milwaukees, and on up. So, Rich, if you don't mind, maybe you can talk a little bit about the operations, at least what we have in the master plan in table 2-14, and how our operations break down.
Well, very good, Kevin. I'd be happy to do so. First off, a little history. This airport was built in 1942 by my grandfather after purchasing the land from some agricultural land from the previous owners, obviously. And it was designed as a training airport. At the time we had World War II had started, we had military contracts for training, and it was designed initially and always has been a training airport. We've run a flight school out of this airport in this location, but different buildings now since 2004, since 1942. Over that time period, we've trained thousands and thousands of pilots, not all of whom went on to the airlines or the Air Force or military and or other careers, but a significant number of them have. If you want to look down at operations here, you can, if we look on table 214, if you add a Capital Flight and Maury Airplane Company's operations for flight training, you're going to come up to almost 3/4 of total operations or flight training here. And this is not inconsistent with an airport that has active flight schools on board. We also have, they're basing the transient visitor traffic on our log that's in the office that people sign in. Not everyone signs in on that. And a fair number, for instance, the freight operations that operate here in the past over the Christmas holidays, we'd have a couple aircraft coming in with the next day air packages quite often in the morning. We still have a Sunday delivery for one of the biomedicals that comes in here every Sunday. These people don't come in and sign in on our sheet, so they're under reported as we come in with that. So not only is the airport, the operations on the airport supporting, we have commercial operations here, we're supporting future commercial operations, as in pilots flying for the airlines or going on to corporate. And the airport itself is providing an integral portion of the freight that you were talking about. Not a great deal compared to Madison, but it's taking a little bit of a load off of the Dane County Regional. We have charter operations that both operate out of here by me and in and out, which allow business travelers to access the west side of Dane County in this area with a lot more efficiently than they would if they were going into Dane County Regional. As the meeting was starting, a Lifelink helicopter had stopped over here to fuel up and then go back to its base. Far more efficient for it to stop here and do that than go through the Dane County Regional and the delays inherent with the Towered Airport. And for a Lifelink or any of the MedFlight helicopters, downtime is critical. They want to be available for any emergency that might happen. So the airport does provide quite a bit of service to not only Middleton, but the whole southern portion of Wisconsin in it and of itself, and certainly western Dane County. Now, something else that's occurring now, we're having an awful lot of young people that are rediscovering that the airlines is a very viable career option. Because of the pilot shortage, even your entry level co-pilot on a commuter airline now is making very good money in the neighborhood of up or close to $100,000 just to start. Now that was unheard of. It used to be that you would have to essentially get paid very, very little to go through your year or so of apprenticeship as a commuter airline second in command. Now it's a livable wage and then some. So young people are looking at this, and the flight schools that turn them out, typically the universities such as University of North Dakota, they want their people to come in with a private pilot license because there is such a demand. They want them to have that level of training so they can move them through in a smooth and efficient manner and continue to serve the demand that they're seeing. And Maury Airplane Company and undoubtedly Capital Flight are integral to that. We're training these young people, getting them up and ready to go. And I know I can't tell you exactly how many, but an awful lot of the people that we're working with right now are career bent toward the airlines. And it's a very good career. It's even better now than it has been since deregulation, essentially. That's pretty much all I have. Well, I'm sure I have a lot more to say, but that's all I can think of at the time. So any questions?
No, Rich, my biggest problem, I guess, is our lack of consistent vocabulary. And what I mean by that is when we operate in the FARs, we have air transport pilots, we have commercial pilots, and we have private pilots. And that's the categorization. And there is, I know some sport pilots for things like short takeoff and landing, whatever. That's kind of a recreation and a competition. There's really not a major categorization. And so when we ask people, what do you do? Oh, I'm a recreational pilot. They're really a general aviation pilot.
Mhm.
And maybe the things that they're doing is like for your insurance, you have to do so many hours a month or so many takeoffs and landing. So when we get our pilot's license, we always say it's a license to learn, because our life's experiences in the aircraft really develop us as a pilot. So what one person may call recreational, it's really just continued education.
Mhm.
And it may be even required education. So I think in all the words, we have to be careful what we say and mean what we say. So
Mhm.
some more hands stuck up here. I'll start from the top. Rich?
Yeah, absolutely, John. And of course, the people that are there, we have a lot of business owners that own aircraft here that use them at least partially, if not totally, for their businesses as well. But, and you are absolutely correct. They need to maintain a certain level of proficiency, both for their own safety and just to stay current. But I want to also, I don't want people to disregard the importance of being able to go out and be, as you said, learning, challenging yourself and how that works. We had Dr. Oliver Smithies, my glider instructor, later was awarded a Nobel Prize in genetics. And of the three people he mentioned in his acceptance speech, my father, his flight instructor, was one of them. He said, by learning how to fly, now Oliver was a great scientist, an amazing man. But he said, learning how to fly taught me how to face, how did he put it? I'm not eloquent, but essentially it was taking on risk, assessing that risk, and being able to deal with it, to overcome it. And you also pointed out that when you make science, when you're doing an experiment, if you do a silly experiment, you get silly results. If you make a bold experiment, you will get bold results. Now, there are an awful lot of people out here that this is their way to unwind, to relax, to focus on something other than running a business or doing whatever they need to do. That is huge and very important. We don't worry about people golfing or whatever else, but there is an awful lot that can be said from what you learn by learning how to fly. And I've had any number of students come back and tell me how much their confidence went up, how this improved their lives in other aspects. And it can't be underestimated, and it's very hard to quantify, but it's there. It's absolutely there. Ask any flight instructor, and they'd be able to tell you, yes, similar stories, and any pilot for that matter.
That's true.
Thank you.
Kevin Munson?
Sure, two quick things. So in my flying career, I was a commercial pilot, flight instructor, have around 4,000 hours logged and about 12,000 flights. So it's a lot of flights, and most of my flying was either I was training or I'm training someone else. It's as Rich said, it's the nature of the business. The same in my professional pharmaceutical science career. You're always training. I would and flying is like that, and like being a scientist is like that, where you're reading literally 3-4 hours a day. Well, flying is the same way. You're training, whether you're a private pilot, commercial pilot, airline transport pilot, or military pilot, you're training. That's what you do. So I just wanted to mention, why training is so important. The second thing is to give you an idea of how critical this transportation infrastructure is in maintaining schedules. Way back in 1985, when I was at Genentech, the first biotech company, we launched our first product, which was the first recombinant genetic engineered product. We're pretty excited about it. Had a big party out at Oyster Point, which is just north of the big runway off of SFO, and we had fireworks. Well, we got permission at night at that party to shut down SFO for 10 minutes. That was it, to shoot off the fireworks, because they said any more than that would shut down the US national transportation aviation system. So that's how critical it is that we have these reliever airports, that even 10, 15, 20-minute delay really messes things up. Weather at one airport really will shut down the system. And I just wanted for people that aren't that experienced, and just to realize how critical these airports are, all of the airports, to keep the system running. And any little thing can shut it down. So just wanted to give you some practical examples. Thank you.
Thanks. Lisa, you're next.
Yeah, thank you. Just a comment and then a question. First, the comment, Kevin mentioned misinformation about airport uses, and maybe, I forget who mentioned terminology being the problem. Maybe that is the problem, but anyone looking at the airport master plan, page 2-8, figure, I forget what the figure number is, but it's on page 2-8. They'll see that 77% of users use the airport for pleasure/recreation, with training at 56%. So if there is misinformation out there, the source is our airport master plan by Mead and Hunt. And I just wanted to make that point. The question I have is, I'm wondering what the goal or purpose is of this item on our agenda. Do we have an idea for sharing better information? Do we have actual data on how many pilots trained in Middleton go on to, or have gone on to the airlines? Because if we have that kind of data, and we all feel strongly that this good news about the airport is not getting out there, maybe we need to have someone do a fact sheet or a webpage to call attention to that.
I think that's a good point. I think the purpose of the request was to try to broaden our understanding of, we sent out some surveys to people and said, rate yourself in these ways, without probably providing enough information on how to rate. So you almost need to define the vocabulary first. And I don't know if that was properly done, or done to a standard that suggests where everybody actually went. If you say, are you a recreational or are you a commercial? Well, given two choices, they may all say, well, we're all recreational. But what does that really mean? What do they do every day? How do they use the airport? So I think this item, this is Kevin Munson's item, but that's my feeling on it. Kevin, you want to elaborate?
Sure. So this issue kept coming up. How is this airport used? And I've seen it published on websites and the town of Middleton website, and a lot of people, a lot of feedback at these meetings were, oh, this is just a recreational airport. And I sat there and I just scratched my head, and where did that come from? Where did that information come from? This was a long time before we even started working on the master plan. And I heard over and over again, all this airport is for is a bunch of people to go out and play. And I said, well, that's not true at all. We have very good data captured according to Alcoa standards that we have that shows exactly what type of operations we have at this airport. And it's very consistent with most general aviation airports, at least the reliever airports that are funded by the federal government, such as Moray, that the primary purpose of these airports is flight instruction first and foremost, and many other critical activities. And also to take that pressure off of the air carrier, air cargo airports that are required to stay on schedule and to move critical items such as fresh produce to get that food out to the people in the United States and of course other countries, Europe and Asia and Africa and every other continent is the same way. So that's I just kept hearing and seeing published the same thing over and over again. I said I just wanted to make sure that we have accurate and factual information about how these airports are used. It's been documented. I think, Rich, if correct me if I'm wrong, but this is something that you have kept track of for many years. So that data is available if anyone wants to actually look at the data and see how these airports are used. So there's just a lot of misconceptions out there, and I just wanted to clear that up.
Thanks. I appreciate that explanation. I guess I would still ask, if there's a choir to be preached to, it's this group, right? So how does this information get out beyond the airport commission?
Well, we could certainly identify what it is we want to say to people. What is the top line, and then try to coordinate or organize the data, either supported or not supported.
Yeah, I mean, even a set of talking points, could be a useful product to come from this discussion.
I mean, what got me involved in aviation, when my father was a military pilot, and I never flew with him. I was too busy trying to build a business. But once I started flying and trying it, I moved to a place where you couldn't get to. I realized the utility of flying. It really wasn't the feeling of a magic carpet ride. It was the ability to get from point A to B in a fraction of the time. And I would say almost everybody on the airport uses their airplane for transportation. Maybe to go see their family about Thanksgiving time or 4th of July or something of that nature. So there's a transportation aspect to it, just like they'd use their car. And some are charities. We have several people that do flights for people that are injured or have cancer like I do, and they fly them to places for second opinions. And I mean, there's all kinds of uses that people do that are charity around even rescue dogs and animals. So it's a little bit unfair just to cover it all up and call it a hobby or a recreation. I mean, it does serve the soul, don't get me wrong. I really enjoy my flying career, but I also really enjoy what it's done for me in terms of added capabilities. And I think that's the barb that holds a lot of people to it. So it could be a job or whatever. But I think if we could come down with, here's the high points we want to, this is the story we'd like to be able to tell. Is it a story we can tell with facts? Now, if you have something you'd like to suggest, Lisa, we can certainly figure out if there's a way to do it.
No, I think you summed it up really well, John, with that last statement about, the story we want to tell, and do we have the facts to support the story? Those are good questions, and that can lead to some sort of public information that is factual.
And maybe Kevin Munson can take this offline and give it some thought and come up with a few ideas.
Okay.
That goes with Rich too. So. But I do think there's value here in being a little bit more granular as to what this airport does and how it's actually used. Okay, are we done with this item? Can we go to the next item then?
I think David had his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, David?
I was going to comment, without being antagonistic to the folks, that keep calling the airport recreational. I mean, because the language is in the documentation that it is used for recreation, it's just it's an opportunity to exploit it. But the reality is, the airport is one of many facilities that Middleton's actually lucky to have, which other smaller cities simply don't have. And so if you look at our parks, basketball courts, tennis courts, and the pool and the golf course, those are all used by the local students in our public school system. And I don't think anyone would argue that. Now, and I'm sure if we want to put time, and all those entities want to put time and effort into it, they can figure out what percentage of these facilities are used by the students, right? So all of these things that are in place for the city as recreation for every resident in the city, including the new cross-country ski park, all have the secondary benefit of educating and providing future opportunities for all of the students in the community. And so if we want to, put a message out there and look at the way it's stated on the city website, and move some of the language around, I think that's a good idea. If I would just say cautioning to put Rich through the task of having to look through records to try to quantify what's been going on since the 1940s up to today, and the number of pilots that the airport has produced, and what percentage of those have gone on to be professional aviators, military, and or astronauts. I mean, that's all fine and dandy, but do we do that with our high school? And does it matter? Does it have an impact on the quality of the school? It's the fact that it's a resource that provides education and it provides benefit to the community. But yes, it also provides an outlet for those who are engaged in some recreational activity. Now, I've been flying out at the airport since 2005, and I've got about 1,700 takeoff and successful takeoff and landings. I don't have the impressive credentials that other aviators have, but I fly regularly. I fly a couple times a month. And so, I mean, I can speak pretty well to the activity of what it's like to be a local pilot and to use the airport. But I can also say that, the pilots that are out there and that are part of the community are also involved in a lot of the activities that go on in terms of training, development, being mentors, and being general advocates for seeing that young people have opportunities to learn and get an education in aviation. It's just one of many facets of life. And like John, we can all look back in our family history. I have a cousin who trained in the area, and he went on to fly as a second in command in the Pacific, and he survived. And then came back to Madison, and through the GI Bill, pursued an education, but he continued to fly at that airport as a recreational pilot. So shame on him for being a recreational aviator, but he continued to do so because it's something that clearly shaped his life as a military aviator. And he couldn't go on to fly commercial because he was a Jew, and Jews at that time were not allowed and not being allowed to fly in commercial aviation. They just simply weren't recruited. So he had to go off and pursue other things in life. So it's hard to quantify the impact of this on people, and where it comes from. It's just part of the community. It's one of many pieces. So I'm done with my soapbox.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but if the information needs to support an accurate narrative, and if it's incomplete, then it could be spun in a negative way. That's problematic.
Yeah, and it is being spun in a negative way.
And that's right.
It's just sad.
And it is
plain
sad. And the
Yeah.
question becomes, can we clarify and organize the data in such a way that it's obvious of the benefit to the community? You know,
Yeah, I mean, I think a message can be put out there. The airport is a training facility. It's historically trained people. The other thing is the airport is taking aggressive initiatives to be an early adopter of unleaded fuel. I mean, this small airport is leading the ways in so many ways that are possible, that what the airport's actually doing is highlighting the progressiveness of this community and its willingness to take on new initiatives.
I agree. I mean, we're, as they say, putting our money where our mouth is. I mean, we're spending the dollars and the time and the effort to put in the unleaded fuels, and at the request of community, and look around and survey all the surrounding airports to see who else is doing it. And the answer is no one. So I work with this every day, so I know what we're doing and why we're doing it. Unfortunately,
Another one of our
aren't up to speed.
Another one of our local aviators, she just put on a presentation last week. She's an engineer and she works for a California-based company that develops electric vertical and takeoff aircraft. And so these are the kind of people that this airport has produced. These are the kind of people who are part of our community. And again, she talked and she mentioned in her presentation, you know, there are going to be air taxis, and what they're going to do is they're going to be designed to fly short distances. So an airport like Maury would be a great place to have an electric vertical and takeoff landing taxi, for example. I mean, there's stuff that's happening out there that I think we're well positioned for, as long as we keep doing what we're doing.
I just had two things to add, if I can. I'll be very quick. One, the number of users in this master plan is accurate. The number of users are mostly recreational. The number of uses of this aircraft are mostly commercial, or this airport are mostly commercial. That's a distinction. We've got 46 hangars here, of which 2 are flight schools. We have 2 users on this airport that would say our use is for commercial. That's why we see that difference. And again, it is in my mind just the nomenclature. Yes, number of users versus number of uses. The second thing is we do have a group of hangar owners that have taken it upon themselves. One of them has a son who's a videographer. They put money together. They're putting out a video that's going to give the history of the airport, talk about various operations here. So that certainly can go. And the last is, it wouldn't be very hard for me to do a survey of my existing flight students and wonder how many of them are planning on going on to an aviation career. And I would pretty much state that every one of our high school kids that's out here and flying right now wants a career in aviation. And that's about 6 of them, maybe 7 now that I think about it, as well as other people that are running into this as a second career after they retire. Just off the top of my head, from the operations that we've done, there's well over 40 people that I'm aware of that have had careers in aviation or aviation related that learned how to fly out here and got their start here. So I can't make sure everything is going to be exact and precise, but I can certainly get a rough estimate of what's happening out here.
Okay, Rich? I don't see anybody else's hand up. So unless anybody has any other comment, we'll take a look and try to see what the data looks like and maybe put a report on it at the next airport commission meeting. Next item, Brian. Okay, so that looks to me like we're through the agenda as listed. Let me ask regarding future agenda items. Is there any appetite for the airport commission or the common council for us to continue to push on the compatible land use designs? Because we put 3 or 4 things through to the council, and the council is not interested in any of them. Does the common council, would they like us to take this up again? The compatible land use and make a recommendation, or is that just something that's off the table because no one has an interest?
Well, we can't talk about that. I mean, even answering your question is a problem because it hasn't been noticed as an agenda item. So I would say it couldn't hurt for the next agenda to have a discussion of compatible land use, what's next? You know, now that council rejected the land use zoning ordinance idea, have we done, again, our due diligence under our assurances? Or is there something that's not quite the level of an ordinance that we could pursue?
Yeah, I think under future agenda items, I think we're covered talking about what we might put on the agenda. We're not really discussing the item, just the validity of should it go on the agenda. I have no problem putting it on the agenda. I just want to make sure there's a purpose for it. And we're not just going through the motions again for something no one's interested, but I'm more than happy to put it in at least as an agenda item. And you and Luke have to represent the common council on this issue, at least initially.
I think it's worth adding to the agenda for next time, if only to close the loop.
Okay, will do. Is there anything else that's other than the continuation of these that we need to be thinking about and you'd like to have added? As always, you can always send me an item and I'll get it on the agenda if it fits somewhere, and we'll discuss it.
One thing that I will bring up for next time is on March 1, the emergency declaration is officially canceled. And I don't know what council's going to do at its February meetings regarding in-person versus virtual meetings, but that's just something to be aware of, that depending on what happens, we may need to meet in person in
Yeah,
March.
we'll monitor that. This venue seems to work out well, especially in the wintertime and we don't know what the weather is. And everybody schedules and that. So I definitely think that once the weather breaks, we should try some in-person meetings. Until then, I'm more than happy with this, but whatever the legal suggests is what the rules are. So we will try to accommodate best we can. Okay. I'll stand by and wait to hear from Brian on that topic. Anything else, folks?
Well, I'd like to just mention something, John. I think that we should hopefully that we'll have the flexibility to choose what would be the most appropriate meeting form, considering that some of our members might have a little immunocompromised state, and we don't want anything to happen in a meeting that we can avoid.
Yeah, and I think it's always gonna have to be a potential for a hybrid, because there are people that, business people and people that travel.
Mhm.
And we try to reasonably accommodate all of the members. But we should try, if I think I read the recommendation from council or from legal, that the preponderance of people should be together for the meeting. And a few outliers can be where they have to be, could be joined by phone or whatever. Yes, Lisa?
Well, and I don't know about Alder Fassard, but I've been advocating for council and any committees that are composed of solely council members, that they should be meeting in person, and that every other committee, commission, or board should have the opportunity to decide as a group how they want to meet.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I'd like to make a motion for adjournment. Do I hear a second?
I'll second
Yeah,
that.
John.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'd like to take a motion vote. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, the airport commission for February is officially adjourned. I appreciate everybody's time and their participation.